The twin moons of Koresh were already pale ghosts on the horizon when the procession reached the edge of the Red Sea of Sand. 14 warriors of the Vrentai clan marched in perfect silence, their bronze-scale armor catching the last crimson light of the setting primary sun. Between them, bound at the wrists with ceremonial fiber cord, walked Lyrian. She was taller than any of the men escorting her, nearly 2¼ meters, and her skin shimmered the deep indigo of high-caste Vren females, the same color as the storm clouds that sometimes crossed the equatorial basins. Her eyes, slit-pupilled and gold, stared straight ahead. No tears. No pleas. Only a quiet, burning stillness that made the warriors uneasy. They had expected screams. Defiance. Bargaining. Instead she had simply said, once, in the Hall of Binding. No. One word. The matriarch's crystal staff had cracked the marble floor. The suitor, Lord General Vaxa Thal of the neighboring Sand Dominion, had laughed at first, then stopped laughing when he realized she meant it. Then came the verdict. Since you refused the union that would secure peace between our houses, the matriarch had declared, you refuse life among the Vrentai. The desert will judge you. Now the procession halted at the lip of a great dune. Below them stretched an unbroken scarlet expanse, wind-carved ridges glowing like fresh blood under the moons. The lead warrior, her own cousin Kale, untied her wrists. Protocol demanded the condemned be given water for 3 days, food for 1, and a knife to end it quickly if she chose. They gave her none of those things. Kale met her eyes for half a second. I'm sorry, he whispered in high Vren. Lyrian did not answer. They turned and marched back the way they had come, leaving her barefoot in the cooling sand. She watched their silhouettes shrink until the desert swallowed them. Then she began walking. Not toward the city. Not toward anywhere she knew. Just forward, because stopping meant accepting the sentence. She walked through the first night. Through the second day, when the primary sun turned the sky into molten copper and her lips cracked open. Through the second night, when the secondary sun rose pale and useless and the cold came down like a blade. On the morning of the third day she fell. She did not get up again. Hours, or perhaps only minutes, later she heard the low whine of turbines. A shadow passed over her. Boots crunched in the sand beside her head. A human voice, male, rough, mildly surprised, said in accented trade speech. Well, that's not something you see every day. Lyrian opened her eyes. He was smaller than she expected. Shorter even than the lowest caste Vren males. Dark hair cropped military short, several days of beard, eyes the color of old olive drab. He wore a faded flight jacket over lightweight desert gear, and a plasma carbine hung casually from one shoulder. Behind him squatted a battered, dust-streaked scout skiff, single-person, open cockpit, cargo pods jury-rigged to the sides. He crouched, studying her without fear or pity. You're not dead yet, he observed. That's a start. She tried to speak. Only a dry rasp came out. He unclipped a canteen from his belt, lifted her head with surprising gentleness, and let her drink. The water tasted metallic and faintly sweet, human purification tablets. She drank until he pulled it away. Easy. You'll throw it up if you take too much. He looked her over again, height, indigo skin, the ritual scarring along her forearms that marked her as highborn and now disgraced. Exile, he asked. She managed a single nod. He sighed, glanced at the empty horizon, then back at her. I'm not in the habit of leaving people to die in the desert. Even really tall, really stubborn people. He stood. Can you stand? She could not. He muttered something in his own language that sounded like a curse, then bent and hooked one arm under her knees, the other behind her shoulders. He grunted with effort. She outweighed him by at least 60 kilos, but managed to lift her. Jesus, you're like picking up a goddamn piano, he said through clenched teeth. He carried her the 10 meters to the skiff and laid her across the rear cargo shelf, securing her with tie-down straps so she wouldn't slide off during flight. Then he climbed into the pilot seat, fired up the turbines, and lifted. The skiff skimmed low over the dunes, heading west toward the borderlands where Vren territory ended and the unclaimed neutral strip began. His name was Elias Kane. Former Coalition Marine. Former corporate security contractor. Current independent salvage operator, his words. He ran a small homestead 30 kilometers inside the neutral strip, half moisture farm, half repair yard, all stubborn refusal to die. He had come out looking for a downed drone. Instead he found her. The homestead was little more than a cluster of prefab hab units buried up to their roofs in a dune for insulation, surrounded by solar arrays and wind catchers. A single landing pad held the skiff's older brother, a heavy-lift dropship missing half its paint. Elias carried her inside again, this time using a folding stretcher, and laid her on the only cot in the main room. He spent the next 4 hours forcing fluids into her, treating heatstroke and early organ stress with a battered field medkit that had clearly seen combat. When her temperature finally dropped below critical, he sat back on a crate and watched her breathe. "You're tougher than you look," he said quietly. Lyrian woke fully 2 days later. Sunlight, filtered through polarized smart glass, poured across the room. She smelled something cooking, protein paste and spices she didn't recognize. Elias was at a small stove, stirring a pot. "You're awake," he said without turning. "Good. Means I didn't waste stim shot." She sat up slowly. Every muscle ached, but the worst of the fire was gone from her blood. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was still rough. He glanced over his shoulder. "Because leaving someone to die when you can do something about it feels like shit. Call it a personal policy. You risk angering the Vrentai." He snorted. "They already don't like me. I salvaged their wrecks without asking permission. One more grudge won't kill me." He ladled stew into 2 bowls and set one beside her. "Eat slow." She ate. It was the first food she'd had in 5 days. She didn't speak again until the bowl was clean. "They will come looking," she said. "Let them come. You do not understand. I refused a political marriage. That is treason to them. They will not simply ask for me back. They will demand my corpse." Elias leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Then they'll have to go through me." She studied him, small, scarred, human, and felt something unfamiliar move behind her ribs. "You would die for a stranger." "I'd prefer not to die," he said. "But yeah, I've died for worse reasons." Days became weeks. He taught her how to use the water reclaimer, how to calibrate the solar arrays, how to strip a plasma coil without losing a finger. She taught him Vren battle forms, slow, flowing, lethal, and how to read wind scars in the sand to predict storms. They spoke little of the past. She learned his language quickly. Humans had simple grammar and too many curse words. He learned fragments of High Vren, mostly profanity and polite refusals. One night, during a rare rainstorm that turned the desert briefly silver, they sat on the roof under a torp and watched lightning walk across the horizon. "Why did you refuse him?" Elias asked. Lyrian stared at the rain. "Vaxathal is cruel." Not in the loud way, quietly. "He collects things. People. Power. I would have been another possession. A living trophy to parade before the Dominion lords." She paused. "I would rather die free than live as furniture." Elias nodded slowly. "Fair enough." A long silence. Then she asked, "Why do you live here alone?" He shrugged. "Got tired of taking orders from people who didn't bleed with me. Coalition wanted me to do things I couldn't stomach anymore. So I left. Found this place cheap. Figured if I was going to be nobody, might as well be nobody somewhere quiet." Another silence. "You're not nobody," she said. He gave a small, crooked smile. "Tell that to my bank account." Months passed. The Vrentai did come. Not an army, just 3 skimmers carrying elite trackers and a single representative of the matriarch. They landed outside the moisture field perimeter and waited. Elias went out to meet them armed only with a sidearm and terrible manners. The spokesperson, a tall female named Cirrus, spoke in clipped trade speech. "Return the exile. Her sentence is not yours to cancel." Elias leaned against a wind catcher strut. "She's not property. She stays if she wants to stay." Cirrus looked past him to the hab unit where Lyrian stood in the doorway, wearing one of his old jackets because her ceremonial robes had been shredded during the exile march. "Lyrian," Cirrus called. "Come. The matriarch offers mercy. Serve a year in the frontier cloisters. Then you may return." Lyrian stepped forward until she stood shoulder to shoulder with Elias. "I said no once," she told Cirrus. "I will say it again. No." Cirrus's pupils narrowed to slits. "Then you choose death here." Elias's hand drifted toward his holster. Lyrian put her fingers lightly on his wrist. "No," she said again, this time to him. She walked forward alone. The warriors tensed. Lyrian stopped 5 meters from Cirrus. If you want my life, she said clearly, take it now. But know this, I am no longer Vrentai. I am no longer yours. Kill me and you kill only a body. My future is already elsewhere. Cirrus stared at her for a long moment. Then she made a sharp gesture. The skimmers powered up. We will remember this day, Cirrus said. So will I, Lyrian answered. They left. No shots. No blood. Just the whine of turbines fading into the dunes. Elias exhaled. That could have gone worse. Lyrian turned back to him. It still might. He nodded. Yeah. But not today. That night they sat on the roof again. No rain this time, just stars and the faint green aurora that sometimes danced above the neutral strip. She spoke first. I have nowhere to go. You've got here, he said. Here is temporary. Everything's temporary, Elias replied. Doesn't mean it can't matter. She looked at him, really looked. You are strange, human. Elias. Elias, she repeated, tasting the name. You could have let me die. Could have, he agreed. Why didn't you? He thought about it. Because when I was lying in a medbay on Epsilon Verge with half my squad gone and the docs telling me I'd never walk right again, someone sat with me. Didn't talk much. Just Saturday. Kept me from slipping away. Figured maybe I owed the universe one back. She considered that. I do not know how to repay such a debt. You don't have to repay it, he said. Just, don't waste it. A long quiet. Then Lyrian reached over and, hesitantly, laid her hand on top of his. Her skin was warm, slightly rough from years of ritual combat training. His hand was smaller, scarred, calloused. Neither of them moved for a long time. Eventually she said, I want to stay. He turned his hand over so their palms met. Then stay. The next morning she helped him weld a new moisture collector. The morning after that she helped him strip an old Vren supply drone he'd salvaged. Weeks later she helped him defend the homestead when a sand pirate gang tried to raid it. She fought like water and steel combined. He fought like someone who had nothing left to lose except the person standing beside him. They won. Afterward, sitting among cooling wreckage, she looked at him, bruised, bleeding from a shallow cut above the eyebrow, and said, I think I am beginning to understand humans. He grinned through the blood. Took you long enough. Years later, 3 standard years, 7 Vren cycles, the desert had changed them both. The homestead was larger now, 2 additional hab units, a proper greenhouse dome, a landing pad that could take a light freighter. Word had spread through the neutral strip that the human and the tall indigo exile were not to be trifled with. They were still nobody, in the grand scheme. But they were somebody to each other. One evening, as the primary sun sank and the moons rose, Lyrian stood on the roof and looked east, toward the territory she had once called home. Elias joined her. Thinking about them, he asked. Sometimes, she admitted. But not with regret. He nodded. She turned to face him. I want to ask you something. He waited. In my culture, she said, when 2 choose one another, they bind palms under the primary sun and speak a promise that outlasts flesh. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a proposal? It is a question, she corrected. Would you bind with me? He studied her face for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Palm up. She placed hers against it. Under the primary sun, still fierce even at dusk, they spoke no elaborate vows. Just 2 words each. I choose. I choose. The desert wind carried the words away across the dunes. Somewhere far to the east, in the Hall of Binding, the matriarch felt a subtle shift in the air, an absence that was no longer painful, only quiet. She did not send warriors again. Some things, even the Vrentai eventually understood, could not be reclaimed. Out in the neutral strip, 2 small figures stood on a rooftop, palms pressed together, while the twin moons rose and the stars came out one by one. The future they had both been told was buried forever had simply moved. And it was growing.